basically, the key thing that everybody needs now is a safety management system. And that really is covering the risks that people are exposed to. And part of that is making sure that you know where those risks may be in the building and also what actions people are taking to address them. The key digital records that people are working on at the moment are really snapshots in time of the status of the safety management system, and any of the changes that have taken place that could impact on those risks need to be recorded, and the new risk assessments and safety case reports need to be generated to reflect that. So why are we actually doing it in the first place? Well, first of all, it's really to guarantee that we're doing what we should have been doing all along. And that is selecting products that satisfy specifications, record what was installed, and record when products or things have been changed out. Now, there's an assumption, I think, by many clients that it's going to be in the BIM model, or it's going to be in the O&M, or it's gone through building control. So therefore, Regulation 38 must have been satisfied. Otherwise, building control would have picked it up. Now, the fact is that that's not the case. The key thing is that the client now has actually got to expressly confirm that they've got all the information that they need. And also the contractor has also got to make a statement that they've actually given it and also confirm that they've received the acknowledgement. So a lot of people are saying, well, what information is needed? Well, we've been through Regulation 38 and we've picked out certain key asset types that you need information on. And it's also important to have that in a context. So the as-built building. So the way in which we're following that through is to identify what asset types are specified. Did they meet the specification? Where were they installed? Who installed them? Was it done properly? Who inspected them? And all of this together comes to form what we call the digital record, an auditable digital record, or the golden thread.
So for those of you who don't know what the RIBA plan of work is, it is a framework that was initially produced back in 1963, surprisingly, so some time ago. It's not new. And it was a framework for projects, the understanding of projects and key milestones through the critical stages, all the way from the start to all the way to its in use. And over the last 50 or 60 years, it's now gone through many iterations and many changes. There were significant updates in processes in the 1970s and the 1980s. And then we saw more significant changes in 2013. It used to have letters, A, B, C, D, E, F, and so forth and so on, for those who remember it. And then it changed to a number system. I think one of the most significant things that changed within it is the recognition of the life cycle of a building, no longer being a linear process, i.e. start from finish, but to be about the start to the end, but the end feeding into the start again. And this was very, very key in terms of the representation of the circular image and how those things go round in a circle. So here it is. Here is the RIBA plan of work, and I'm hoping many of you will have seen this before. Along the top, you've got the main critical stages of the projects. And down the left-hand side, you've got sort of key elements of what we would hope to see at critical stages along the projects. So we can see that even in this is the 2020 version. Down the bottom, and aligning nicely to many of the questions that George iterated, was the inclusion of things like information exchanges, critical information exchanges about projects. But what's key to understand about the RIBA plan of work is it also has significant overlay documents that sit within it. So when you set out your strategies for projects, it also has critical overlays for things like conservation projects, cost, fire and safety, health and safety, and so forth and so on. So the framework of the process is also flexible and adjustable to add additional requirements and understanding to critical stages on many projects. In 2019, the RIBA actually did a consultation on the plan of work and the integration of fire safety. And I think it's really critical to understand why this was done at that point. It was pretty much immediately after the Building Safety Future report was released by Dame Judith Hackett. And it was a critical timing for the RIBA to recognise that there was something they needed to change. A significant shift was about to happen and things were going to naturally change. And here it is. Here is the overlay of the RIBA plan of work. And what it did was it identified existing fire safety issues. And it's worthwhile just pausing at this slide and remembering that this slide again was back from 2019. And if you look at the left-hand side with the highlighted circles, you can see there was a recognition of key duty holders. Again, terms that we're now seeing very, very commonly referred to under the Building Safety Act. And along the top, you can also see some key elements in terms of the alignment with approved documents of B1 and B5 and the other sections. But what you can also see here is this very much aligns to the new gateway processes. So the gateway 1, the gateway 2s, you can see how these critical involvements at key stages were very much recognised back in 2019. Obviously in 2022, the Building Safety Act arrived. And it's a big piece of legislation, and it has many, many tiers of additional legislation. But what was interesting is, did it really change the RIBA plan of work? And the answer is no. The RIBA plan of work was already ahead of the game. It already had recognised many of the things that were coming. It had also answered many of the queries that were coming from the Grenville reports. So the framework was already in place. But I think the key thing that the legislation brought in was it brought in more powerful things to make sure that people were doing the right things. The frameworks were there, the ideas were there, the legislation was there, but what probably wasn't happening is people weren't necessarily following those things in the right pattern, or having any ownership of those tasks to really do them and make sure they followed them through completely.
Construction design management, so regularly kind of abbreviated to CDM 2015. Basically, this is a set of regulations often abbreviated, which are within the UK that govern health and safety and all considerations within construction projects. These regulations aim to ensure that the construction projects are planned and executed safely, both on the design level and also on the construction level. It places legal duties on various parties, from the clients, from the principal designer to the principal contractor, and also the workers and anyone else involved in it. And overall, it aims to improve the health and safety standards in the construction industry, as said, by placing these legal duties on those stakeholders. So, kind of overview of requirements. So this is kind of just going to list out kind of the rough requirements for each individual stakeholder. So you've got the client duties there. So obviously the client's aspect of it, if it's your building or if you're responsible to actually be procuring aspects on the building, you'll be responsible to actually bring in the principal designers and the principal contractors and making sure you're doing all your due diligence to make sure they're accredited, that they've got experience around doing these sort of projects. And then you've got the principal designer, which obviously with their kind of responsibilities, they're the ones, especially on a fire safety note as well, they're the ones who will be coordinating and designing the process. So with regards to CDM, they're making sure that the actual design of the building is all safe on a health and safety perspective and on a fire perspective. Very important they get it right, because obviously it will then be determined of how safe the building is moving forward, how kind of successful the project is moving forward. Then you've got the principal contractor. So their job, whether obviously in the CDM aspect of it, is they'll also be appointed by the client, and they'll be responsible in actually managing the health and safety during the construction phase. So as the actual project's carrying out, they're the ones who need to make sure that everything on site is all up and good, obviously in line with legislation, and that everyone's safe on the site. You've then also got the health and safety coordination. So basically, CDM 2015 emphasizes the importance of cooperation and coordination among all parties involved in a construction project to identify and mitigate health and safety risks effectively. And they've got risk management as well. So regulation also requires that risk management is to be conducted on various stages of projects. So as you can probably imagine, with construction stages, it's a very moving scale. So it needs to always be kind of looked at on a regular basis, obviously during the different phases of the construction process. And then information sharing. So CDM 2015 promotes the sharing of relevant health and safety information among all parties. So obviously the principal designer and the contractor and also the client all sharing information during it to make sure everyone is up to speed with where everything is, and everyone's obviously knowledgeable about what the health and safety risks are in that stage. But kind of just a few common challenges that we find with regards to construction and design with high-rise and flat box and listed buildings. So with high-rise and flat box, so got the likes of extended travel distances. So basically ways to get around that and rectifying that. You conduct a risk-based approach, reviewing and implementing additional control measures as further compensation, such as AWFSS, automatic water fire suppression systems, which is an improved means of extended travel distance under BS 991. Lack of sprinkler coverage. So understanding that the requirements for the sprinkler coverage for blocks over 11 meters may not be implemented as it is a new building regulation requirement. Although not respective fire requirements to existing buildings, we will work with clients to ascertain whether scope or project warrants further applications of the building regulations. And then finally, obviously on high-rise design issues, there's not obvious crossover from CP3 guidance for blocks and flats constructed in the 1960s to 70s. However, with our holistic approach and risk proportionate approach, we will consider all differences and our risks on passings through gap analysis review at these stages. And then you've got the listed buildings, again, just a few examples of common issues with that. So got the lack of compartmentation. Again, being a listed building, they're usually done quite quite far in the past. Compartmentation might not have been thought of in the past. So to kind of get around that, there's a bespoke way for every single building. Again, there's no one size fits all because there's loads of different kind of shapes and sizes for listed buildings, especially. But for this one, we kind of put risk-based approach, reviewing the implementation, additional control measures as further compensation, such as more detectors and early warning, and then obviously treatments such as fire retardant sprays and paints to further enhance the fire resistance. We've also got convoluted means of escape or extended travel distance. Again, very different. Listed buildings can be all shapes and sizes, so it's kind of quite relevant, especially if you are doing construction design or if you're making any changes to these buildings, that you review each issue and consider compensatory features which could be implemented in the design. And then finally, obviously, design issues. So working with Historic England and local authorities to overcome any restrictions on building alterations and comply with listed status which might be on the building.